A king who had watched his own father broken and humbled by the Most High God, who knew exactly how this ended, lifted the holy vessels of a conquered temple to his lips. He toasted gods of gold and silver, choosing with full knowledge to defy the one God who held his breath in his hand. This was King Belshazzar of Babylon, hosting a magnificent feast for 1,000 of his most powerful lords. Deep within his seemingly impenetrable palace, the air was thick with the scent of rich foods, the din of laughter, and the joyous strains of musicians playing lyres and pipes. Belshazzar, at the head of the hall, leaned back on his cushion, radiating a supreme confidence, utterly convinced of his unshakable power. Wine flowed freely, staining the marble floors with crimson splashes as servants poured from large amphorae into waiting cups. Amidst the revelry, the king commanded that the golden and silver vessels, once sacred to the temple in Jerusalem, be brought forth. These were spoils from a conquered nation, revered implements of worship, now destined for a drunken party. The vessels were passed hand to hand, their holy purpose forgotten, as they were filled with common wine. Belshazzar and his lords, his wives and concubines, all drank from the consecrated gold, their faces flushed with wine and hubris. With each audacious sip, they praised gods of gold and of silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. The hall thundered with their cheers, a cacophony of idolatry, openly defying the power that had humbled his own father. Belshazzar, observing the scene, felt an immense surge of power, believing his kingdom to be impregnable, his actions unchallengeable. The laughter grew louder, the music swelled, and the celebration reached a crescendo of absolute, unthinking security. The sacred vessels moved from hand to hand without a single pause, each guest drinking and passing them on as though they were common cups. No one hesitated, no one questioned. The profanation felt as natural to them as the wine on their tongues. Belshazzar watched it all from his cushioned seat, a slow smile of ownership on his lips. The great hall felt untouchable, its thick walls and towering doors a promise that nothing could reach them here. Musicians played on, servants refilled every cup, and the night stretched out in easy, unbroken comfort. To every man in that room, the kingdom of Babylon seemed as fixed and eternal as the stars. Nothing could possibly happen. Then, in that very hour, without warning, the account came due. Near the flickering lampstand, on the plaster of the king's palace wall, appeared fingers of a man's hand. Slowly, deliberately, the fingers began to score ancient script onto the wall. Belshazzar's laughter died in his throat as his eyes fixated on the words taking shape on the wall. His confident posture stiffened, then began to visibly falter. His face, once arrogant and flushed, drained rapidly of all color, turning a sickly pale. His thoughts troubled him deeply, and a visible tremor ran through his entire body. The joints of his thighs loosened, and his knees knocked uncontrollably against one another, a physical collapse mirroring his internal terror. The entire banquet hall, moments before a riot of sound, fell into an absolute suffocating silence. Belshazzar, his voice hoarse with fear, cried out for his wise men, the enchanters, and the astrologers. He promised vast rewards, purple robes, a gold chain, and the position of third ruler in the kingdom to anyone who could read the mysterious words. One by one, the famed wise men of Babylon approached the wall, their faces a mixture of scholarly intent and growing alarm. They conferred amongst themselves, whispered, and gesticulated, but the words remained an undecipherable enigma. None could decipher the inscription, nor could they explain its meaning to the increasingly frantic king. As the king's despair deepened, the queen, hearing the commotion, calmly entered the banquet hall. She observed the king's terror and the wise men's helplessness, then remembered a man from an earlier era. "O king, live forever," she began. "There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods." She spoke of Daniel, known for his extraordinary light, understanding, and wisdom from the days of King Nebuchadnezzar. Desperate, Belshazzar ordered that Daniel be brought before him immediately. An old man, plain-robed and dignified, Daniel was led through the now hushed and anxious hall. He stood before the king, whose desperate gaze seemed to cling to him. Belshazzar repeated his offer: purple, gold, and the third position in the kingdom, if Daniel could interpret the words. For a moment the hall held its breath, every eye moving between the trembling king and the old man who had not yet spoken. The purple robe and the heavy gold chain gleamed on the tray, the price of a kingdom's third throne laid before Daniel. It was everything a man carried into exile might have longed for: rank, wealth, the favor of a king. Daniel's gaze fell upon the tempting display of earthly rewards, then lifted to meet the king's frantic stare. Without a moment's hesitation, with quiet conviction, he gently pushed the tray aside. There was no pause in him, no weighing of the offer. The gold held no power over a man who already served something greater. "Let your gifts be to yourself," Daniel declared, his voice clear and resonant, "and give your rewards to another." He would not be swayed by power or wealth. His purpose was greater than any earthly gain. The rewards meant nothing to him before a verdict already written. Purple and gold were only dust. A profound silence hung in the air, weighted by Daniel's unwavering integrity. The king, who had expected a bargain, found instead a man who could not be bought, and the discovery deepened his dread. His silence answered before his words did. The truth he carried owed nothing to the man who held the throne. What the wise men could not buy with all their learning, this old exile would give freely, and without flattery. Then Daniel turned to the king, his voice steady as he began to speak of a past lesson Belshazzar had ignored. "King, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father greatness, glory, and majesty. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit hardened in pride, he was deposed from his kingly throne. He was driven from men, his heart made like the animals, until he knew that the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men." Daniel's gaze, unflinching, locked onto Belshazzar's diminished form. "You, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. Instead, you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven, and brought the vessels of his house before you. You have drunk wine from them, praising gods that neither see, nor hear, nor know. And you have not glorified the God in whose hand your breath is, and whose are all your ways." Finally, Daniel turned to the inscribed wall, his voice now a stark pronouncement of judgment. "This is the writing that was inscribed: MENE, MENE, TEKEL, Paris." He pointed to the first word, his voice resonating with grim authority. "MENE, God has counted your kingdom and brought it to an end. TEKEL, you are weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians." A profound silence descended upon the hall, heavy with the weight of immediate, unavoidable destiny. Belshazzar, utterly broken, gave a weak command for Daniel to be clothed in purple, and the gold chain placed around his neck. The old prophet, who had refused the gifts moments before, now accepted them as a mere formality, his task complete. That very night, the divine verdict came due. King Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, who knew the truth and chose defiance anyway, was slain. His confident arrogance, his deliberate sacrilege, had led to a swift and quiet end, measured in a single night. And Darius the Mede quietly received the kingdom, taking what had been counted, weighed, and found irrevocably wanting.